Are you familiar with the name Ignaz Semmelweis? He made one of the greatest discoveries in all of medical history. You see, he was an obstetrician who worked around the mid-1800s, and he was the chief resident of a hospital in Vienna, which had two maternity wards, two clinics where women could go and have their babies. So one was staffed by medical doctor students, and the other was staffed by midwives learning to give birth through their midwives. And so women at this time were dying at a high rate because of a fever that they called childbed fever. And what was really surprising was that the doctor's clinic had a rate of mortality that was 25 to 30%. The women didn't even want to go to that clinic. But the midwives, they didn't have such a high percentage. And so Semmelweis was determined to find out the reason for this high mortality rate amongst the doctors. So he looked at their procedures, even some of their religious procedures, and what they found was everything was pretty much the same. So everyone was stumped. But one day, his friend Jacob was helping a student do an autopsy on one of the women who had died. And he accidentally got poked with a scalpel. And then he died of the fever. And when they did his autopsy, it was almost identical to that of these women. So that's when Semmelweis figured it out. He said the medical students were doing autopsies right after the women died so that they would learn more, and then they would go right back to the delivery room to birth these babies, where the midwives weren't doing that. So immediately he instituted hand washing before they went back to deliver their babies. And of course, the rate of death dropped down to less than 1%, and in some months they had 0 deaths. So you would think that all of Europe, this would spread and everyone would begin washing their hands and all these deaths would stop. But that's not what happened. Prominent doctors at the time rejected his theory. They said, how could simple hand washing be the thing that would stop such a deadly disease? It was just too simple. And they didn't understand it. They didn't know germs yet. They didn't even get discovered. And then, if they did accept this theory, then they were to blame for all of these deaths. So they said, we'll reject this. So think about this. Someone had to die for a cure to be found of a deadly disease that people rejected. Doesn't that sound familiar? Jesus had to die so that we could find a cure for our deadly disease called sin. And yet today, people still reject that cure. So today, if you've not accepted that cure, where God sent his Son into this world so that our sins could be washed away in our watery grave of baptism, then let today be that day that you receive that cure. And if you have received that cure, then we've got to tell the world about Jesus. We can't let anything stand in our way. We've got to remove obstacles in order to tell people about this amazing cure. You know, Semmelweis actually had a mental breakdown because he had found a cure, and yet the world was rejecting him. Likewise, we need to be driven mad, understanding that we have a cure to save the world, and we cannot stop until the whole world hears the good news of Jesus. So today, wash your hands, and then remember the amazing sacrifice that Jesus made, because he had to die so that others could live. And we've got to see our world as a mission field, sharing that good news with our world.